Hi, Steve here. A convicted felon who's been charged with over 100 offenses in Nashville, Tennessee, is again behind bars. This time for kidnapping and raping a 25-year-old Amazon delivery woman.
Metro police say an Amazon delivery driver was kidnapped, raped, and robbed while delivering packages early this morning. Now this man, Carl Hamilton, is facing charges.
Police say this happened in the mailroom at an apartment complex downtown. This is on Ronald Reagan Way. Police say the 25-year-old female driver was delivering packages when Hamilton walked in, pushed her into the back of the mailroom, closed the door, and then sexually assaulted her. Afterward, he made her drive him to an ATM and used her debit card to steal $100.
Officers were able to arrest Hamilton thanks to surveillance cameras at the apartment complex. Police say he's a career criminal who has been charged with more than 100 offenses in Nashville alone since 2007. And just 2 years ago, he was found guilty of assaulting a woman.
If we've just learned, Hamilton was in court yesterday and had 5 other charges dropped. He's now charged with aggravated rape, aggravated kidnapping, and robbery.
It's very troubling, as I said. If you commit a murder and 6 months later you're out, or a year later you're out. We're seeing that trend pop up a lot more since 2020.
And now we have our second whistleblower found dead. The first whistleblower was in the middle of giving depositions suggesting that Boeing retaliated against him over complaints related to quality issues when he was found dead from a gunshot wound. The second whistleblower alleged that Spirit leadership ignored manufacturing defects on the 737 MAX, including mechanics improperly drilling holes in the aft pressure bulkhead of the MAX. 45-year-old Joshua Dean, a former mechanical engineer and quality auditor from Wichita, Kansas, alleged that Spirit leadership ignored manufacturing defects on the 737 MAX, including mechanics improperly drilling holes in the aft pressure bulkhead of the MAX. When he brought this up with management, he said that nothing was done about it. So he filed a safety complaint with the FAA and said that Spirit had used him as a scapegoat while they lied to the agency about the defects. The shareholder lawsuit alleging that Spirit management withheld information on the quality flaws and harmed stockholders was filed in December. Supporting that suit, Dean provided a deposition detailing his allegations. After a panel blew off the side of a Boeing 737 MAX in January, bringing new attention to the quality lapses at Spirit, one of Dean's former Spirit colleagues confirmed some of his allegations. He had been in good health and was noted for having a healthy lifestyle. His Aunt Carol Parsons said when he became ill and went to the hospital due to breathing difficulties, he was intubated and then developed pneumonia and MRSA, a serious bacterial infection. His condition deteriorated rapidly and he was airlifted from Wichita to a hospital in Oklahoma City where he died. And finally, we have another lawless judge who said the Second Amendment does not exist in her New York City courtroom. A Brooklyn man has been found guilty of 13 weapons charges after being arrested and charged in 2022 for building his own firearms. Dexter Taylor, a 52-year-old New York City native and a software engineer, became fascinated with gunsmithing and weapons sciences and began building his firearms during the onset of the Wuhan coronavirus pandemic lockdowns. He took up gunsmithing as a dedicated hobby that he planned to turn into a business. However, when a Joint Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives and New York Police Department task force discovered that he was legally buying parts from different companies, they opened up an investigation that led to a special weapons and tactics raid on his home and his subsequent arrest. After being arrested and charged in 2022 for building his own firearms, the jury found Taylor guilty. The verdict delivered on April 16th saw Taylor found guilty on most counts, with sentencing scheduled for May 13th. Taylor is expected to face a prison term of between 10 and 18 years. The defense attorney representing Taylor detailed a contentious narrative of bias against the defendant. Judge Abina Darke repeatedly disrupted his opening statement and hindered his efforts to establish Taylor's defense. The judge explicitly instructed the defense to refrain from invoking the Second Amendment because it has no relevance in the New York City courtroom. The judge said, "Do not bring the Second Amendment into this courtroom. It doesn't exist here, so you can't argue Second Amendment. This is New York." Taylor's defense attorney said, "She rejected these arguments and went out of her way to limit me." Moreover, there were attempts to portray Taylor as a dangerous individual involved in illicit firearms manufacturing in his basement. In turn, the prosecution did not allow Taylor's family to show support in the courtroom, nor did they allow his neighbors who knew about his hobby to testify on his behalf. His defense attorney described the prosecutor's opening statement, and here's what he said. He opens up and he says that Mr. Taylor had a parade of horror. He was building this horrible place when they saw this horror that he was making under the noses of his neighbors because all of those guns intended to hit their targets, basically implying that he was going to do some harm with these things. Taylor's attorney repeatedly countered the narrative, but the judge interrupted him throughout the trial to shut down the argument. This led the jury to believe that they must convict, despite arguments for jury nullification. It's pretty obvious to most of us that we don't have a justice system anymore, and the things that were legal 30 years ago, they're trying to make illegal now, and the things that were illegal 30 years ago, they make them legal now. The Bible and the Book of Enoch both make it very clear. Lawlessness will never be tolerated by God. Men can say it's legal and they can say it's right to commit sin, but God says the sinners will die. If you're a Christian like I am, and you're not only tired of the lawlessness, but you feel like maybe these godless people are winning, you need to know what the prophet Enoch says. In chapter 94 of the book of Enoch, he begins the woes. A woe is a great warning defined by grief, distress, deep suffering, and affliction. It's a warning of all those combined, coming to those who live ungodly. And now I say to you, my sons, love righteousness and walk in it. For the paths of righteousness are worthy of accepting, but the paths of unrighteousness shall suddenly be destroyed and vanish. And to certain men of a generation will the paths of violence and of death be revealed, and they will hold themselves far from them and will not follow them. And now I say to you, the righteous, don't walk in the paths of wickedness, nor in the paths of death, and don't draw near to them, lest you be destroyed. But seek and choose for yourselves righteousness and an elect life, and walk in the paths of peace, and you will live and prosper. And hold fast my words in the thoughts of your hearts, and suffer them not to be effaced from your hearts. For I know that sinners will tempt men to evilly entreat wisdom, so that no place may be found for her, and no manner of temptation will diminish. Woe to those, there's another woe. Woe to those who build unrighteousness and oppression, and lay deceit as a foundation, for they will be suddenly overthrown, and they will have no peace. Woe to those who build their houses with sin, for from all their foundations they will be overthrown, and by the sword they will fall. And those who acquire gold and silver in judgment suddenly will perish. Woe to you, you rich, for you've trusted in your riches, and from your riches you will depart, because you have not remembered the Most High in the days of your wealth. You've committed blasphemy and unrighteousness, and have become ready for the day of slaughter, and the day of darkness, and the day of the great judgment. Thus I speak and declare to you, he who has created you will overthrow you, and for your fall there will be no compassion, and your Creator will rejoice at your destruction. And your righteous ones in those days will be a reproach to the sinners and the godless. This is the time we're living in right now. We're seeing this, and it's going to increase. We're seeing that Christians are the ones who are hated by this world. That's why they're passing laws that violate our free speech, that violate our ability to speak the gospel. Here it is, right here in the book of Enoch. This may be one of the most clear signs confirming that what Enoch is speaking about is our generation. Think about it.